This is the 18th season of Bass Talk Live. With your host, Matt Pangrath. BTL is brought to you by Lowrance, Bass Cat Boats, AFCO, Duck It Fishing, Strike King Lures, Sunline, Big Bite Baits, Spro, X-Zone Lures, Gamakatsu, The Bass Tank, Denali Rods, and Pro Guide Batteries.
PTL, coming at you.
Good morning, and welcome to Bass Talk Live, where we're going to talk about bass fishing. Exciting show today. It is time for our yearly chat with Elite Series MC and host of Facts of Fishing and host of the Mercer podcast, and that kind of gave it away with the last name there, Dave Mercer. And for probably the last 8 years, we have had Dave on, sometimes before the season, sometimes a little bit after the season, to kind of give his opinion, his kind of state of the union on what is going on the Bassmaster Elite Series. But with a full season under his belt of Mercer, the podcast, man, he can get a little bit more outspoken now. So we're going to dive into some different topics, a lot of topics that, I talk to Dave probably about once a month, I'd say. And we end up talking on the phone. And I always look down at my phone at the end of it, and it's like 43 minutes, 46 minutes, an hour and 10 minutes. And just a guy who's been around for a long time. First met him in early 2010s, late, when I was covering the TTBC, the Toyota Texas Bass Classic, and at the time it took 15 from the Elite Series, 15 from the FLW Tour, and 15 from the PAA, the Professional Anglers Association trail. Put them all together, 45 guys on a lake, and it was kind of a year-end tournament brought to you by Texas Parks and Wildlife and Toyota to see who the best of the best was. And Dave was the MC of that. And then shortly after, I think the first classic that he called was KVD's win. I think that was right. Let's bring him in and see if that was correct. What's going on, Dave? How are you doing?
I'm doing good, and that was 100% correct. That's right. 2011, his last.
What do you remember about that? That was your first deal. You had not called it an Elite Series because that was when the Classic, I believe, kicked off the year. Keith Allen had just ended his long tenure as a host of the Bassmaster Elite Series on stage. You come in, and your first gig is the Bassmaster Classic that KVD wins. What do you remember about that moment?
Oh, lots. I mean, it was. I wasn't nervous, and I've told people about this. I literally wasn't nervous. I was uncomfortable. And what I mean by that is because at that point, I mean, me and Tripp had never weighed a fish together on the stage. It was kind of dumb to start at the Classic when you really think about it. But so you have to get a cadence down. You know what I mean? Like how long it takes him to wrap the fish, and and you get used to like certain things where to start at the Classic, I had no idea of any of those things. So it was kind of a whirlwind, and I remember the 4-hour fog delays in the morning. And I'll be honest, Panger, most people don't know this, but working for Bass is no different than working at any other factory or anything. So, like when the new guy comes, you get I don't know, hazed or whatever you want to call it. And I remember Chuck, anytime I'd stop talking during those fog delays, he'd be like, "Go out there and interview some people."
Right.
So I did 4-hour freaking interviews every morning. And that's why when we came to Sunday, it was KVD shuts the door on number 4.
That was the Louisiana Delta. What I remember about that tournament, a couple things stick out. One of them was kind of the coming out party was that Brandon Polinick's first introduction to the world, where everyone was like, Paul Hunick, who is this kid? And the other thing I remember about that was, do you remember all of the electronics companies were putting radar on the boats? And I had the bright idea of being a media observer on that, and I called a bunch of guys before that tournament even started because I could kind of pick who I wanted to be with, because it's very strategic. You want to pick someone who you think is going to catch him, who you know you're going to have a good time covering, but you don't want to pick someone who's going to get a camera boat with them. So I ended up going out with Kelly Jordan. I wanted someone that was going to run to Venice. Remember that run from there all the way to Venice? So I call, hey, are you running to Venice? No, I think I'm going to stay. This is before. I mean, they don't really know. And Kelly's like, hey, yeah, I'm going to Venice, regardless of what I practice. I'm like, okay. And I didn't tell him why or anything. I was just doing stories. So I called up, put in a request for Kelly Jordan, and he didn't have the radar. And I just remember these guys just rolling past in the fog, like through oyster beds and all this stuff. And they've got this radar like woo, woo, woo on the back. And Kelly like idled next to the side. And he's like, you know, it's hard to win the Bassmaster Classic if your boat's cut in half because of a boat wreck. And he fished for like 45 minutes the entire day.
Yeah, that was a crazy time. You know, you realize those radars went away. Like after that.
Wasn't there like some sort of health head? Like they installed, some of them were like the wrong ones that had like radiation, and it was literally like a foot behind their heads.
Yeah, they're designed for ships and our big yachts, right? So they're the thing that goes on the very top of that thing, and it's well away from anybody's head. But we had guys strapping them to a butt seat on the back deck, and it was it's a good thing those went away. And I'm amazed that those dudes had as much faith in them. You know what I mean? Like they were learning how to use them, and they were just like, we're going. And that was a crazy time. I'm thankful those went away.
What was your relationship with Kevin at the time? Like when he won that, like how well did you know him?
Oh, I knew Kevin really well at the time. If it wasn't for Kevin and Zona, I mean, I wouldn't have got the job to begin with. Those were my two kind of champions that got behind.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah. Well, I met Kevin through the TTBC, you know, and got to know him really well there. And I met Zona at the Bassmaster Classic. And for whatever reason, we all kind of just really got along. I mean, it's pretty obvious why I got along with him. It was KVD and Zona. But no, so I knew Kevin really well. Not as well as I know him now, but it was really cool. And in retrospect, I mean, when he won that week, I'm like, oh, yeah, this is going to be perfect. He's going to win these all the time. And I'm so thankful that I got to announce one of the classics that he ended up winning, because that was the last classic he won at Bass.
Yeah, I mean, he won a lot of tournaments after. We had I had Jordan Lee on the very first week of 2022, and we were talking about his second place finish on
New York.
Yeah, up in New York on Cayuga.
Yeah.
And he said, I asked him to say, I said, you know, what did Kevin say to you after that? You're a young kid. You both probably had some interactions through Dynamic. And he's like, Kevin didn't say much. He's like, all I really remember from that was the Bush beer. And like, I'm crushed over there. And Kevin's like, and everyone's just spraying Bush beer all over the stage because it was one of his sponsors at the time.
I heard that show, just so you know. I mean, I listened to most of your shows, and I have to admit something. The Bush beer was my fault.
That was you?
The event was sponsored by Bush.
Right.
And he was sponsored by Bush.
Okay.
And I know Kevin likes beer, and I like beer, so I just figured. So, yeah, I remember being the one yelling, somebody give me a beer, and people thought I was joking, right? But then they started coming and spraying, and I didn't realize how much it would.
You traumatized Jordan. Man. You traumatized Jordan Lee to the point where he then was like, I'll just win back-to-back classics at Angler of the Year.
I think he got over it.
Yeah, he did. I was gonna tell you this story off air, and I said, I'll just save it for on air because it's something I think you could appreciate. So I've got a new house, a new residence. Boat fits in the garage.
Congrats.
And one of the things that you have to do is get internet. I got to have solid internet for BTL. Eventually I'm in the studio now with Mark. Mark's letting me use the studio, but I'll eventually have a studio. So the realtor said, hey, like they really stink at answering their phones. You're probably going to have to go in. Small town in Oklahoma, right? So I drive in, I walk in to get it, and I walk up to them. There's kind of like a cat corner thing with just two desks, and I said, hey, I need to get internet. And there's two girls working there, probably late 20s, early 30s, and like 20 seconds after I walk in, this cop car just rolls up, and the guy's like in full, it's a cop. And I'm like, well, I wonder if maybe I had like ran a red light. It's a new town that I'm not used to. And he walks in and he kind of stands back and doesn't say anything, which I thought was odd because he's either in there to like get to tell me, hey, you broke a traffic law, or he's in there to get internet. That's all it is. It's like a broadband store, and he doesn't say anything. And I notice he's eyeballing me, Dave. You ever get that feeling when you know someone's just like kind of eyeballing you, but it's like awkward to actually tell, and you're trying to figure out, what's going on here?
Yeah.
So I keyed in after about 30 seconds. He just said, all right, which one of you two push the button? And I'm like, he's talking to the two girls working there, and they both just, their faces just drop, and then they start giggling, and they're like, she did it. No, she did it. So here's what had happened, Dave. This is called a classic pickle. I was in a pickle. They, like 30 seconds before I walked in, no one was in there. They found the panic button. They didn't know what the panic button was, so they pushed it.
They found out.
The panic button when someone comes in and says, give me all your money, and you just tap the button that's underneath the desk, and it silently alerts the authorities. So they push the panic button. 30 seconds later, I walk in. Now I'm a dude in a hoodie standing at the front desk. Then the cop comes, sees me up there. They don't answer their phone from the alarm company or the cops because they like don't answer their phones there. So now he thinks I'm like robbing the joint, and I'm he's assessing the situation. Did this guy say, "Oh, here come the cops. You got to play it cool"? So once he realized that, another cop shows up like 30 seconds later, and then he says something in, and he's like, okay, so everything's like good here. And they're like, oh, she did. And he's like, yeah, okay. He realized I wasn't robbing it. And he said, okay, I'll call off the rest of the unit. So then he says something there. They had the whole police force coming, and here I was. They thought that they'd hit the panic button, that I was robbing the Wi-Fi store.
Wow. And what would you freaking rob from a Wi-Fi store in the first place?
I guess routers, I don't know. Maybe it had been a bank before. Like I said, I was in a small town, but the panic button worked. That was quite the pickle to be in, though.
Wow. Strange. Makes me feel good about Canada. I had a cop show up last year during a podcast, like looking for me because of all that border crap. And so it makes me feel good that
at your house.
Oh yeah, dude. It was the most bizarre thing ever. We're recording, and my wife starts texting me, and I get totally distracted during this recording. And I'm like, there is a cop here. And he basically was here to check because of the quarantine crap that went on last year. I wasn't quarantined at the time, but here's the joke about it all. It turns out that you can totally home alone Canadian police, because he never met me, because I told my wife, I'm texting her, I'm like, tell him to come in here. Cause the second, like I found out there really was a cop here, I'm like, this is going to be podcast gold. The cop's going to arrest me. And it takes that kind of stuff to get people to watch my podcast. So I was excited, but he just heard my voice and said, okay, that's good enough.
Which interview? Do you remember who it was?
It was a show I used to host.
Oh, okay. I got you. I didn't mean to go there. So speaking of Mercer though, you got a full season under your belt now. Yeah. It's weird because I never had aspirations of starting that kind of podcast. Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? But it's really been one of the coolest things, just because to have that connection with all of the guys, you know what I mean? And really just take the time. Like you said, we talk once a month. Everybody tries to keep in touch, but there's a lot of times you just don't get that one-on-one time. So I'm really enjoying it from that standpoint. You know what I mean? It's fun to see different sides of the anglers. You know what I mean? One of the best comments I got, literally the best comment ever on that show. And I honestly, just because of what he said, the guy said, and it was kind of an insult, but the guy said, we all have our favorites on the Elite Series. And then we also have guys that we don't really, cheer for that much for whatever reason. Mm-hmm. You don't relate with that person or whatever. And the guy said, but without fail, they'll come on the show and I'll see a side of them that I never saw before, and I'm instantly a fan. So that's the coolest thing about it, getting to know the guys and getting to interact like that, and getting to show, like who they are outside of fishing. You know what I mean? It's not that there's not enough podcasts already doing that anyways.
It is. There's a lot out there. But is there anyone I find this in BTL often. I'll have, this will be a solid show, a guy who just won or a guy who's had success or someone on the show, but you don't really expect it to be like a real banger show. Like when you have a Gerald Swindle on or a Paula Nick or an Ike Nelly, something like that just the name recognition, you kind of know that they're going to bring it. Was there anyone that really surprised you as you got into the interview that you were just super impressed with that you didn't expect it going into? Because I find that happens fairly regularly on BTO when you start diving into guys' stories. You've known these guys for 10 years and you have no idea there's this whole other side to them.
Yeah, I mean, there's a bunch of them. I mean, one of the most recent ones, Jake Latondras, and he's not even an angler. He's a Bassmaster camera guy. And and I thought that Jake would be a great, he's great on camera, just interacting with him. He's one of the guys that I always talk to at the tournament. So I thought personally this will make a good show, but you always kind of wonder how people will react to it, because there is whenever it's not an Elite Series Pro or an MLF Pro, people might not tune in, but the awesome response from it was, it was all positive. It was something different that people hadn't seen. But as far as anglers, I mean, Justin Hamner, there's a dude who, I mean, he's got jokes. Justin Hamner seems all serious at the tournaments.
I got to try to find this picture. Continue talking about Justin Hamner.
You talk to him and he's a hilarious dude, but like when you see him cross the stage, and that's what people have to remember, these guys get just a short, like everything that they have going on, like they compete all day long, they come back feeling however they do, then they go through the trough, and a lot of times their feelings change depending on what they hear or see, on their way up, and then all of a sudden, boom, you're in front of a giant crowd and you've got 30 seconds to a minute to talk about something, and all your sponsors want you to mention them and everything. So you don't always get to see the real Justin Hamner. And I was pretty impressed by him on the podcast, and so were a lot of the viewers.
Yeah, he came to Oklahoma and he had his stuff installed by the Bass Tank. And I was talking, I crappie fish a lot during the off season. So he stayed at the house, and there was a pair of sunglasses at the house. And the next thing I know, we're just having a conversation, and then this is Justin.
Wow.
Wearing the shades, just mean mugging like that. And he wore those things for like an hour inside, just walked around. We ate dinner. He kept the purple shades on.
He commits to it. I mean,
yeah, that's a story. And I think one of the cool things about the podcast and all the information we have to the anglers is, before this, you wouldn't have realized like what he had on the line and how full his plate was. With found out he was going to have a baby, quit his job, and made the Elite Series all within like a 18-day span, and then went out with like not much sponsor support, made the Classic, and now is rolling. Like, we just see a guy who, the guy caught him, he's young, I'm sure he's having a good time, but he had like a lot on his plate. And you find out there's so many of those guys who, are either just hanging on, really taking risks, or have really planned that without kind of the podcast and the one-on-one and all the time, you'd never know those stories, and now you root for them.
Yeah. I mean, and that's the truth about all of them. They all have incredible stories, you know what I mean, of everything they've overcome and everything they've sacrificed to be there. It's crazy. That's also what makes it tough as you get to know guys, like in this past year, when you see some of those guys get eliminated, that's the toughest part about it. But it's also the truth about pro sports. It's something that just doesn't get exposed nowadays, because everybody wants to win. You know what I mean? Everybody gets a trophy. But like, for the first time in 4 years, we had a cut, and it sucks for those guys cut. I wish all of them were still here. But how can I turn and say that they deserve to be here over a Jacob Fouts or, Porosnik, or any of those guys that are coming this year? It's a tough gig that way, everything that they sacrificed. But I enjoy the podcast, and people seem to be enjoying it. I don't know how they find time, dude. To be honest, I find it weird. Like, there's just so many podcasts. So I find myself trying to talk to them about almost anything but fishing. Like we talk a lot about fishing, but a lot of it's about like the mental side of it or what it feels like in certain environments and things like that. So I don't know. We try to be different, but let's be honest. We're all just people talking to a camera on a computer with a different backdrop.
Here's the way I look at it, though. Especially now with the smart TVs, you have Hulu and Netflix and Disney Plus and all sorts of these. You can go on the cable TV and you have hundreds and hundreds of channels. But when there's a quality product out there, something that really grabs your attention, like I'd never heard of Paramount until Yellowstone came out.
Yeah.
And look at what that channel has done. And, you know, you talk about saturation and whether it's a YouTube channel or a podcast or just a TV channel, anything relating to it, man, I think you have unique content, quality content that's done with conviction and consistency, and that will eventually stand out, and then the numbers kind of show for it themselves. So like I'm all for more content out there. I'm all for you know, the podcasts and the live streams. I mean, I jump on a ton of those. I love getting on Travis Manson's Smallmouth Crush and doing stuff. I know you recently did stuff with the Serious Angler guys and Bailey and those guys over there. Just, I mean, they work really hard and have worked hard for years. So, I mean, it's a really small pool, but at the same time, I feel like it's a deep pool. So you could have some, you could fit quite a few people in there, and everybody can kind of have their taste. If they want something that's kind of fun and out there, if they want the serious side, if they want the tips and techniques, if they want the lifestyle stuff, and it all kind of works its way out in the wash in the end.
Yeah, I think that's the truth about any of that stuff now. Like that, you can get exactly what you want in the world. Like if you want a podcast that's all about, you know, the serious breakdown of the baits and whatever, that's out there. If you want a podcast that's just funny, everybody, it's the truth. I mean, and that's why I think it's so important just to be honest and real on the podcast. If you're trying to be something, you know what I mean? Like there's pros that I feel that try to play a character and don't even ask me to say their name because I'm not going to bang her, but there is pros that play a character in front of the camera and I don't feel that they're ever comfortable. You know what I mean? Like they truly being yourself and being comfortable is what I think people find success in it. I think that's why people love Takumi Ito. You know what I mean? Because he's real and he's himself.
You think that's one of the reasons why Gerald Swindle has developed such an incredible fan base that is so loyal to him? Because it seems like he actually does pour his guts out when he gets into an interview. And it seems, you know, for a guy that's won an Open and 2 Angler of the Year titles, he hasn't lifted a classic. He's a self-admitted grinder when it comes to that, but man, his fan base is so loyal, and it always seems like you're getting such an honest interview with him every time he's on a show.
I think that's Gerald 2.0 in my opinion. If you've watched his evolution as an angler and as a person, really, I mean, it used to be just all jokes on the stage, and it still is tons of jokes. But I think he's really made an effort or just accepted that this is who I am. I get pissed off when I don't catch him. It hurts when I don't catch him. You know, he talks about all of those things. And I think that somebody would have looked at him before and said, just do more of that, more jokes, more whatever. And he still does a lot of that. And he's one of the funniest natural people I know in the world. But he's got more fans because he tells people that, you know what I mean? If you want to make the soccer team run harder, it's not, you get rewarded on effort in life, and it's going to be tough and you're going to be beat up. And you look at somebody like that and everything he's overcome to be where he is. I think that people connect with him just because it's real. Like not everyone's felt what it feels like to win a Bassmaster Classic, but everybody on earth has felt what it feels like to lose. Maybe not a classic, but to lose something that you wanted so badly. Everybody's experienced that. That's real life. And Gerald brings that to people. You know what I mean? Like his openness and his willing to talk about positives, negatives, and everything in the sport. I think that's, in my opinion, that's made Gerald even bigger. You know what I mean? Like he got known as the funny guy, but his openness in all of these podcasts and interviews, I hear more people that say, man, this guy needs to be a motivational speaker. This guy needs to, it doesn't matter whether he's talking about fishing or life, it matters, but the words that he says. So I think that, yeah, him being real is an amazing part of him. But I think everybody's, Panger, when I started this job, dude, like I literally walked on a stage and I'd do a video, and outside of that, you never saw me other than a TV show. Now the world sees each and every one of us every day in different lights, whether it be a podcast, whether it be Instagram, whether, social media, we're all doing everything. So the world is demanding more access to the things that they're into. And I think that that's just forcing people to be more real in all sorts of sports, just because you can't not be real. You know what I mean? Because you'll be exposed if you're not.
What's your definition of winning and losing? Because you hand trophies to a lot of guys and you have to console a lot of guys who finish second. But at the same time, I've seen guys who are pretty dang happy that you usher off the stage who just snuck in for a $10,000 check. I've seen guys that are devastated for a second, and I've seen guys who are really pumped for a second. It's a weird sport, man. I mean, like I said, you got guys who win maybe 2-3 times over the course of their entire career. You just called a Bill Lowen win a couple of years ago. It was the first time he won. He's won over $1 million. What's your definition of winning and losing now that you've seen this for so many years?
I don't think that I can have a definition of winning and losing, and that's not me avoiding the question. I think that the definition of winning and losing is different for everybody. For example, I mean, I've never, ever weighed a fish on the Bassmaster stage, but I feel like I'm winning.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's not just the anglers. That's obviously my personal, but you look at Bill Lowen. Bill Lowen never won a Elite Series event until last year. But you can't look at his career and say he hasn't been winning. That's actually why I started calling him Dollar Bill, because he cashes checks as often as he does. So I think that the definition between winning and losing is decided by the person in their situation. Because, I mean, staying on what Carl Jacobson did last year, he's won an Elite Series event, but what he did last year just to climb back into contention after almost being eliminated going into the last few events, that's freaking winning, man. That is, he fought for that, and that may mean more to him now than ever. You know what I mean? Like, as the future goes on, to see how things go. Because without that, I mean, he gets relegated out of the Elite Series again. So whatever Carl does from here on in the future, it might be the 50 and 60 place finishes that are behind him that is truly winning, that gets him in that position, if that makes sense.
Yeah, 100%. We're talking with Bassmaster Elite Series MC, host of Mercer Podcast, and Facts of Fishing host Dave Mercer. Here's what we're going to do, Dave. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, I want to talk to you about working with new tournament director for the Elite Series, Lisa Talmadge. After longstanding work with Tripp, you talked about the importance between the MC and the tournament director. With the Elite Series just around the corner, I want to get your thoughts on working with Lisa heading into the 22 Elite Series season. This is Bass Talk Live.
The Ultimate Fishing System by Lowrance. Your choice of powerful fish-finding tools, all connected. From sonar and trolling motor to navigation and networking. To fit the way you fish. All with touchscreen control from HDS Live, the heart of your system. Find more, see more, catch more with the Ultimate Fishing System by Lowrance. Upgrade to the Ultimate Fishing System and get up to $1,000 cash back.
The new Puma STS has been redesigned from the ground up. With the angler, design, function, and performance in mind, nothing on this new offering was compromised, and the only thing carried over from the previous version is the name. Based on the Soft Touch series hull that started with the flagship Jaguar, this new model is nimble and performs incredibly well at all speeds with either a 250 or 300 horsepower engine. Featuring a new 96-inch wide-body footprint, this hull measures out at 20 foot 7 inches in length. Industry-leading design coupled with tournament-winning performance. The Puma STS from Basscat. Feel the rush.
Elite Series Pro Daryl Gleason here. My Pro Guide batteries keep me going on those long tournament days and long practice days. Always plenty of juice, never fail. The best part about Pro Guide batteries, it's the people behind the company. They have over 40 years experience in the battery business, keeping all of us fishermen out on the water longer, catching more fish. Check them out at ProGuideBatteries.com.
What's up, Bass Talk Live fans? Brandon Polnick here. And ever since I won a couple Bassmaster Elite Series events on X-Zone Lures, I've been getting a bunch of questions of what makes them so special and different. And really, the truth is, it's in the details. The little details, things like no cheap fillers in their plastic. That gives you more lifelike action, more realistic and vibrant colors. But don't just take my word for it. Go to www.xzonelures.com and check them out for yourself.
I've made my living on the water for over 20 years.
For 14 years.
For over 23 years.
I've worn a bunch of different clothing brands over the years.
Some companies big.
And some companies small.
All of them said they were making clothing for us.
But none of them knew us.
None of them were us.
Except for one.
Except for one.
Except one.
AFCO.
AFCO.
AFCO. AFCO.
Fishing isn't part of us. It is us.
The KVD 100 jerkbait. 15 different colors. A perfect combination of roll, wiggle, and flash. Increased castability. 3D eyes. Premium black nickel hooks. KVD. Tie one on. Striking lures.
Welcome back to Bass Talk Live, talking with Dave Mercer. Can we get you to say that one time just like that? Fishing isn't part of us. It is us.
Fishing isn't part of us. It is us. I don't know why I said it so angry in that commercial. I didn't realize until after I watched it. Angry.
It is. Like I said, we were talking with Dave Mercer, and before the break, I kind of queued it up. He worked with Trip. Well, Trip worked with a lot of people, and was recently just inducted into the Bass Fishing Hall of Fame because of it.
Yeah.
But there's a new tournament director, and for it was probably about a year, it seemed you worked with a number of different Waymasters tournament directors there. I know, what'd you do? Chris Bowes.
Yeah, Chris Bowes.
John Stewart, Hank Weldon, and then Lisa Talmadge. And then with the kind of restructuring of the, would you say, the tournament director department at Bass?
Yeah.
Yeah. Hank went to the Opens. Chris Bowes is now overseeing all of the tournament directors. John Stewart still is doing the Nation, but is he also doing the college?
Yeah.
Or they hire someone else?
Hired a new person to do that. So John Stewart's over Nation, but I think he's also over that the college and high school falls under Nation. So John Stewart kind of looks over that, and Chris Bowes looks over all of them. And and I get to work with Lisa at the Elite Series, which, I mean, talk to any of the anglers. Last year, that was the role that Lisa played at all the events, and we had a lot of crazy things, weather delays. And I mean, you look at our first event last year, you forget that the first 2 days of the St. Johns River was postponed, and she had a lot of tough calls to make. And man, that's tough for somebody new to that job. And she did it marvelously. So I'm excited to have LT on stage with me.
Is that what people call her? Is that her nickname, LT?
What? That's what.
Or is that what you just coined it?
No, I always call her that. And
okay.
I don't know. It's just her initials, really.
All right.
People
like
ask
everyone just
me what
calls
it
you
stands for,
Mercer.
and I tell them Little Trip. Because she used to work with Trip like for a year. Trip's last year, she was Trip's right-hand man right there at all the events. She traveled with Trip. So she kind of filled in, took Chuck's role, who had retired the year previous. So it's not like she's new to be dealing with the anglers. Like, she's been on tour with us for this will be her third season. But how cool is it that number one, she's well equipped for the job, but I think it's just incredible that she's got that job, in most likely the most public position there is in officiating in pro fishing. And not only is she well equipped, but to have a female tournament director, I think is pretty freaking cool and commendable to bass. So Lisa's awesome to work with, and I'm looking forward to continuing working with her.
How much stuff goes on behind the scenes with a tournament director that the general public just never knows about? I mean, is there stuff that goes on every tournament that is handled internally, rightfully so? It goes on without a hitch, but you and Triple look at each other and be like, man, if they knew what happened behind the scenes. Is that pretty much every tournament, or is it just once or twice a year that you have issue, like, protests, off limits, rules questions, that type of stuff?
I'd say it's every tournament, and I wouldn't say it's always a protest, you know what I mean? But it is a question that's something that, these anglers, or let's make no mistakes, the rule book was made by the anglers over the years. It used to be this thick, now it's this thick, because people figure out different things. So they're always being, put in situations where you have to make a judgment call. And I think that happens every tournament. Going into every tournament, anglers with questions of different, you know what I mean? Like, they find out of the way areas that aren't included or whatever. Is this included?
If there's a gray area, they'll find it.
Yeah, they're the best at it. And so I'd say tournament directors, like, I think nobody understands how often somebody like Lisa or Tripp in the past, when you see him walk to the backstage while I'm interviewing an angler, how often there's a conversation going on and he's dealing with it or she's dealing with it. You'd be shocked. I mean, it's every tournament that they've got one of those things. And then on top of that, they deal with weather, they deal with, impending storms. They also have to, make sure everyone's safe at the venue. That's why you'd see Tripp in situation in the past when we had a storm coming in. He'd be like, we need to speed it up because, we need to clear the venue. So they're always balancing stuff. That is a job that I would never, ever want, Panger. Like, I'll be honest, I'll do a lot of things, but be a tournament director at a bass tournament is not something I want to be ever.
And then you also have someone, not only are you then working with Lisa or Tripp before, but you also have someone in your ear, right? Like, that's talking to you while it's all going on. Is that like every weigh-in you've got someone in your ear too, like a little earpiece?
Not as much anymore, because since live came about, we used to have the truck at all the events, but now the truck and everything is in Little Rock and it's not at the events. So literally the only time I use an IFB for the most part now is at the Classic, just because, because of the setup there. But I guess, I mean, it means they trust me. They used to talk to me a lot more, and now they just kind of talk to me if I screw up afterwards.
You ever said anything where you went backstage and were like, oh no, and like you get called in for a meeting over, because you think about it, you're saying thousands and thousands of words on stage, impromptu, working with hundreds of different people. You don't have to go into specifics, but have you ever got put in a timeout?
Not for anything I ever said on the stage. No, I think I've been lucky so far. I've avoided that. The Night of Champions, I get in trouble pretty regularly for that one. But it's a little bit more relaxed event. So but not on stage, I think I work for a pretty cool company. You know what I mean? Like they know it's a live event. I'm sure things have been said that people have to answer for and stuff like that. But I've avoided so much. I don't get in trouble at this job. I just show up, do my job, and leave, Panger. I've learned if you're not there long, they won't find out you're screwing up.
All right, let's get into some of the nuts and bolts here of the 2022 Elite Series season. You mentioned it. There were a number of anglers that were cut for the first time in a lot of years. I mean, you had like a 2-year deal, and then you had a COVID year that was in it. You had a lot of attrition, and the new anglers brought in with the split starting in 2019. So it's a new look in 2022. 13 new Elite Series anglers will be making their debut. Some of them are returners. You obviously mentioned Jacob Porosnik. I mean, that's going to be a seamless transition for him. But we did a Young Guns week back in 2021 where we interviewed, let's see if I can get them all right. We had Jacob Fouts, Jay Shakurat, and Alex Redwine, and they're all like 22, 23 years old, jumping on the Elite Series. What are your thoughts on the field going into 2022 and the 13 new Elite Series anglers that you're going to have to get to know when this thing kicks off in Florida?
I'm excited. I mean, 13 new anglers, and one thing that stands out to me is how you mean 2 of the qualifiers that qualified through the opens are former Carhartt College bass champions. You know what I mean? Like, which amazes me. Like, to me, that program's standing out. Like, it's incredible. Obviously, I'm talking about Cody Huff and Jacob Fouts. It's amazing that they, like, I think honestly, the one thing that gets overlooked in this sport is qualifying for the Elite Series is incredibly hard. Like, it's 3 out of that. Like, so I think that, I mean, they're all, the Elite Series is going to be a very difficult place to stay in the future, because if you look at the names that were cut this past year, and we haven't had a cut in 4 years, and then you look at the 13 that are coming in now, look at the results of the first tournament. Remove those 13 that just came in and look at that list and realize that at the end of the year, we're going to have to remove another 13. It's crazy when you look at how tough it is to stay there, when you look at the amount of names there. So I think that the one thing that people should say is that these guys aren't rookies anymore, man. When they come, they've been tested. And I think that you're going to see that. I mean, by just simply being the top 3, it's not going to, you know what I mean? Like, you know how hard it is to get into the Elite Series. So I don't think you can classify them as rookies. You know what I mean? I know they are rookies to the Elite Series, but man, they have been tested at every level. And one guy that I'm really excited about that I haven't met is Maddie Wong. I mean, I just think that he's kind of a breath of fresh air. You know what I mean? Like, he's got that surfer vibe. You know what I mean? He stands out already, and it's interesting to see. Like, we haven't really had, since I guess Caleb Sumrall, like the 2 guys that stand out to me that have really charged up. Paul Mueller, he's another Bass Nation
2018 would have been, I believe, Sumrall's rookie season.
Yeah, but if you look at it, a lot of the Bass Nation guys have been eliminated. You know what I mean? They make it and they stay for a couple of years, but it'll be interesting to see how Maddie does, but I'm excited to meet them all. I mean, why did you talk to me about the people that I don't know, Panger? That is not very nice. I mean, but why wouldn't you interview me about the people that I do?
I'm trying to think. So the Bass Nation guys that are on the Elite Series through the Bass Nation, formerly the Bass Federation, something that we've talked about in the past, very near and dear to your heart. You have made it a point in the past to be the MC for that Bass Nation. Big supporter of the grassroots fishing it would have been Polinick in 2012. It would have been Paul Mueller in like 13 or 14, like fairly soon after that. And then I'm just talking about that are currently on that I would say are still trucking would be Sumrall.
Yeah, and we're totally going to be
forgetting Caleb Cuppall?
Yeah.
Was he was Kupal?
Kufal? No, he wasn't a Bass Nation. Was he wasn't? Was he? No, I think he was Opens.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a weird name to say. We were all saying that wrong for a while too, and then he told us it was Kufal. But yeah. So I mean, we've got great. We really came to a grinding halt here, Panger.
No, we're good. We're just chatting about the schedule. I'm looking at the schedule, and this is we'll go round and round about this. It's not really a deal, but I don't see any reason why Seth can't repeat, especially with the back half of the season. Do you? If he catches them in Florida, do you see any reason why he can't repeat as Angler of the Year?
If he catches them in Florida, sure. But that's a huge if. I mean, that's what's going to be interesting, because Florida is that one part of the equation that you have some incredibly accomplished anglers that still hate Florida. And it's a scary, because the big bite matters so much there. You know what I mean? And it's going to be the same in both those fisheries. So you get, whether you get that bite or don't get that bite, it's so easy to, have 2 bad ones in Florida. But I think these first 2 will show a lot, obviously, for angling. And that's when we started talking about Seth last year, when he had a good start at the first tournament, because routinely that's been his worst part of it. But repeating his Angler of the Year, I don't even want to put that stress on Seth Fighter. Let him enjoy his Angler of the Year.
He doesn't feel stress.
I mean,
he doesn't feel stress. You think he feels stress?
I think Seth is, I don't think he does feel stress competing, but I think Seth works a lot harder than people think. You know what I mean? Like, I think that the perception of he's just, going to go out there, and he's an incredibly hard worker. He's incredibly detailed. Like when you watch him rigging rods and stuff like that, he is very dialed in that way. But I think on the water, he learned that that's what it takes for him to be successful. I mean, he literally almost got eliminated from the Elite Series, and he got to the last two events. One of them he had to qualify for, but he literally he had accepted the fact that I probably will be done, after this season. And he said, I'm just going to have fun and go fishing. And he said to me, like, it's almost like the less he cares, the better he does. And that is kind of a rule in fishing, I think. If you look at people most anglers, honestly, the only exception when you look at the greats, in my opinion, is Mike Iaconelli. For most of them, they are very mellow people. You know what I mean? When you watch, we talked about Jordan Lee, super mellow. You know what I mean? Even Kevin, as fast as he fishes, he's very relaxed. And I think that having that is the biggest deal for Seth. You know what I mean? So from the outside, I think it looks like he's very calm, but I think he's calm because he gets his ducks in a row and he puts in a lot of work. And when you think about it, if my theory's correct, he should have less pressure on him and maybe be even more deadly. So you're right, Panger. He will be a 2-time Angler of the Year at the end of this year.
You brought that up. I was listening to your Mercer interview with Brandon Polinick, and he talked about how he's the guy who always puts himself behind the 8-ball. He always puts himself under pressure, and that's when he seems to perform the last-minute fish catches, the pressure fish catches. And I thought that was an interesting interview because I never even really realized that, because he is one of those guys that is his level around it. You don't see him having the meltdowns and the freakouts, and you don't realize that he's feeling that pressure. But he said on your podcast, yeah, I feel that pressure. I put myself in those situations, and that's when I seem to thrive the most. But on the outside, he's able to maintain that and perform at a higher level under that pressure instead of crumble under it.
Yeah, and it's amazing to see that, because I've openly said when he started filming, when he started shooting his YouTube series, as a friend, I was like, dude, do you really want to do that? And that year he went and won Angler of the Year. Polnick is one of those dudes that the more pressure you put on him, the more eyeballs that are at him, he raises up. And he says, and I agree with it, a lot of that comes from wrestling. I mean, people that don't understand wrestling at a competitive level don't realize the mental power that wrestlers have. I mean, there's a reason that wrestlers, it's not just the technique, but there's a reason that wrestlers dominate in MMA, because they're the most disciplined people on earth. I mean, Polnick, I believe, used to cut like 14 pounds or something like that, 14 pounds a week. So at the beginning of the week,
healthy.
No, it's not at all. It's horrible for
That's
you.
what you were doing. What season was that you were running? You were cutting 14 pounds in Elite Series week for a couple of years there, Dave.
I was. Now I just sweated out during
the
week.
Lean and mean.
I was. I got to get back there, Panger.
You were either weighing in fish or jogging.
It was weird. I'd get off the stage and I'd run, but I felt great. And
sorry, I didn't mean to sidetrack you there.
This is horrible. I'm never coming on this again. This thing has gone to shit since Jeffries left. Sorry, I swore on Bass Talk Live.
That's okay. Your first one in 2022, Dave.
Is it?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know whether I should celebrate it.
I got through Ben Milliken without any curse words. He did ask before the show, though. He's like, "What's the motto here?" I said, man, you could say whatever you want. I said, I used to kind of push the limits on it. And Jeffries was kind of like, hey, let's keep it clean on that. And then we got some messages. We go, hey, listen to it with the kids and stuff. It is what it is. Iaconelli makes a point of dropping at least a couple every time he comes on. So,
well, I'm sorry. It was only the S word, which is
sorry.
That's
fine.
Sorry.
Anyway, we were talking about Polnick.
We made it. Here's a tip. When you do drop an S word,
a squiggly line from Polnick to your workout routine in 2011.
Yeah, just all
back
right
to
downhill.
podcast.
Here's the thing. If you do drop the S-bomb on a show like this, you probably shouldn't make it a topic and talk about it for the next 10 minutes so the people that didn't notice did notice. It's kind of like swearing on Bass Live, really. I mean, if you watch, a pro will swear and you might not notice it, but if you pay attention within about a half a second, you'll hear Zona giggling. So it usually,
He does. They got in
stands
trouble.
out.
We talked about the Florida stuff. The other thing that's like on the schedule every single year now, and the guys know it, is the St. Lawrence River. But it also seems to be different every single year, and it's one of those stops. And I'll be honest, I get sick of them going to the St. Johns River. Even though it's a little bit different, sometimes there's eelgrass, sometimes they're not. Sometimes they're spawning, sometimes they're not. Sometimes it's a shell bed, sometimes they're not. But for some reason, I don't think the guys get sick of the St. Lawrence, and I don't think the viewers get sick of the St. Lawrence. What is it about that fishery that allows it to maintain its intrigue, even though it's an annual stop? Now it seems for every tour.
It's just an incredible fishery. I mean, how can, even if you don't like smallmouth fishing, you like that kind of smallmouth fishing because and I think it's so intriguing because there's so many differences. And I feel like we also get to see people learn more about it every year. Like I'm excited about this year's because they're going to be running, out of Clayton. So they're going to be right at the lake. And if you look at the difference in weights from when Takumi won last year to when Chris Johnson won, which is the difference of locations, and that didn't even include Canadian water at the time, you can see the difference. I mean, they just get more time in that on the lake. And if this will be the closest we could crack 100 here. And I know everybody always talks about that, but if you look at Chris's weight, he got the closest we've ever come. And I think it was less to do. I mean, it had time of year, but it all had more to do with the fact that they had a long time to get out to where they want to be. I mean, if you're running from Waddington, it just restricts. I mean, you've got several hours to fish, literally 2 to 3 hours, where now guys will be able to fish in the prime water for 6-7 hours.
You look at what Corey Johnston did in the Open this past year. That was out of Clayton. That's a weird ramp there. It's just like a road that ends in a marina, and then there's like no parking. Anyway, I just remember the first time I rolled up, I was like, for the Open, I was like, there's no way this is the ramp. That was very helpful. He came out, he's like, no, this is the ramp, and then there's a boathouse over there, and you park over there, and I'm like, I gotta figure out some other place to put in. But if you look at his 3-day wait and what was going on there, now granted, it was a little bit different time of the year. That was a 3-day wait at 78 pounds, Dave.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think there's any doubt if the weather is cooperative. I don't think there's any doubt that it doesn't crack 100. I honestly would be more surprised if it doesn't crack 100 than if it does this year. I mean, that was windy, that tournament too. There were some guys that the first couple days, 78 pounds even for 3 days. He would easily have had 100. He'd had 105 if it was a 4-day tournament.
Yeah.
And lost a couple.
Yeah. It's I wish we'd go there late. Like I wish we'd push it back. I'd love us to go there. The further you push it back, the bigger the fish get. You know what I mean? So you can increase that weight through 2 ways, go there later or give them more time. So they're going to have more time. I think it's pretty much on the exact same week as last year, if not a week off. But I wish we'd go there a little later. But I think 100 pounds is definitely doable. But that's also the topic every year. Like which ones will be 100 pounds? But what I've learned over and over again is it doesn't matter where you go. You know what I mean? There's fisheries we go to and you expect to be lights out. It's all what happens with the weather leading up to it. And but the St. Lawrence River, it doesn't matter what happens with the weather. As long as they can get out there, it seems like they catch them.
It's a magic place.
It is. It's really a special. I mean, all those smallmouth fisheries it's primetime smallmouth. Like this is the best time in history to fish for smallmouth bass. It's not, when people will be like, oh, back in the day, it was this. It's better now than it's ever been. They're getting more pressure than they ever have. But as far as the resource, it's incredible.
I want to take one more break, and when we come back, I want to switch topics a little, and I want to talk to you about where you see the future of live, and I also want to get into maybe some alternative formats.
Oh, okay.
We'll be back. It's Bass Talk Live with Dave Mercer.
So, you're looking to buy fishing electronics, huh? Are you also looking for true experts to help guide you through it? Well, at the Bass Tank, you've come to the right place. We are live forward-facing sonar pioneers with thousands of hours spent learning through winning trophies, cashing checks, and just having fun. Whatever brand you need, we have it. We offer free shipping, and we have 2 financing options available. Our experts are here to help you. Call us today or visit thebasstank.com.
Hey guys, Major League Fishing Pro Jacob Wheeler here with my new Signature Series line of rods with Duck It Fishing. We have my 7.2 cranking rod right here. Crankbaits can be very fickle, and having the right, having a lot of tip can be too much, and having not enough tip can, lose a lot of fish. So you really got to be careful. If there's 1 or 2 techniques that I'm really adamant about having the perfect action as a crankbait, especially like the square bill, IDT6, those medium running crankbaits in the springtime when those fish's mouth are pretty tough. That's when I'm really on top of having my actions just perfect.
Combining one of the most popular hook styles with Gamakatsu's beefier Superline offering, the Gamakatsu Superline Offset Round Bend delivers the strength necessary to target big fish in heavy cover. Well suited for braided line and heavier fluorocarbon, the Gamakatsu Superline Offset Round Bend is built using stronger Superline wire that allows anglers to easily fish a finesse worm around heavy cover. The round bend offers a larger bite area, perfect for any worm presentation, while increasing your hookup ratios. The newly enhanced Z-Bend holds your plastics on the hook longer, reducing the number of pull-offs and reducing damage to plastics. Available in 2/0, 3/0, 4/0, and 5/0, this is the most durable worm hook, designed for heavier lines that hold your bait on longer.
Preparation is key to success. And that preparation starts well before you ever hit the water. You're only as strong as your connection to the fish, and your line is that critical connection. Confidence in your line every minute of every day on the water is a necessity, and failure, it's not an option. Sunline makes the fluorocarbon, nylon, and braided lines to give you the strength to guarantee your confidence.
One of the cool new jig heads that Big Bite came out with is the ram head, named after the golden ram cliff perch, and it's really designed specifically for the Ned style. But one of the cool things about this jig head and the Gamakatsu hook that Big Bite put in it, especially in the 3/16 ounce model, is how versatile it is. You can actually rig it 4 or 5 different ways instead of having to go through a myriad of different jig heads. This will get the job done. A bunch of different jig heads. You can actually very efficiently get the job done with the new ram head.
The Spro Little John crankbait has been around for almost 15 years, and it is one of my go-to crankbaits whenever I need a fish in the boat, so you can never have enough new colors. That's why Spro's coming out with a handful of new colors, including Pearl Shad, which has this bleached out white look, but it's got this pearlescent, really pretty. We've got Copper Shad, which looks amazing in the water. It's got that purple flake on the back, really pops in the water. And then if you want some real pop, we've got Sparkle Shad, nothing but sparkles all over this thing. And then last but not least, we've got the matte Sexy Shad, just a really different looking color for a crankbait. So you want to give them a little different look, that matte Sexy Shad is definitely the one to go with. All these colors are available in the original Little John and the MD.
Welcome back to Bass Talk Live, talking with Dave Mercer, closing out our final segment with some hypothesization. Is that a word, Dave?
I don't know. Makes you sound drunk, like saying judicial system.
Hypothesizations, maybe some crystal balling, some forecasting. You guys have live dialed in. And I mean, there is I'm going to go with another word, a myriad of options when it comes to watching live fishing now. And it seems like the crew at Bassmaster with Tommy and Mark and Ronnie and Such and Davey and you have the thing dialed in. Is it status quo here for the next couple of years? Do you have this thing optimized, or where do you see the next step in live going when it comes to professional bass tournaments?
Well, I'm glad it looks like we have it dialed in, because behind the scenes, it's always mass panic. But that's kind of what live anything is. I mean, live. Well, first thing I'll say is live. The guy that doesn't get enough credit for live is Mike McInnes, because he was the one who said, "Man, we can do this." And me, and at the time, it was just me, Tommy, and Zona. And we were all like, "Yeah, how could, like, literally that morning at the way of the Classic, I'm like, it's not going to work." But if you look at how quick it's growing, it's been incredible. And I think that the future of live is just more live. I mean, we've seen what the future is. At one point, you'd have guys competing in the Classic and it would shut off. Now live is in the trucks with them all the way back to the arena. There's part of me as the tournament MC that, as much as I love live, I kind of hate live, because it makes that job a little tougher. Because we reveal so much. But I think that the future of live is just more live, more accessibility, more ways for us to connect with the anglers. I mean, every year we get more anglers on camera. Every year we get, more opportunities. So I would think, I'd love to see a world where you could choose your angler. You know what I mean? I'd love to see that. Come up, see how somebody's, pick which guys you want. I'd love to see a world where every angler is covered. I don't know how realistic that is, to happen right away, but I think that the future of live is just more live. And I wouldn't have imagined it would have, if you'd asked me 5 years ago where it would be right now, I wouldn't have imagined it would have grown as much as it does. And I don't think we'll be able to recognize it in 5 years, because that is the one thing that's proven. Every year they try to make it bigger and do different things and do more things.
Did the process of live change at all when you guys made the switch to Fox at all, or was it pretty much the same thing on a different platform?
It was pretty much the same thing on a different platform. And I'll be honest, we all kind of like, there's this new Fox deal and you're like, well, how's this gonna work out? But they've been incredible to deal with. They like the product that Bass is. They like what live is. They didn't want it changed. And we'll see. I mean, maybe I'll show up at the first tournament this year and there'll be some guy from Fox who's totally changed. But
and you'll get in trouble for something you say on stage.
Probably.
You'll just be like, I should never have done that podcast.
Yes. I'm starting to feel that way, Panger. No, but I feel that they've been a great partner. Like there's been so many opportunities. I don't think the viewer realizes just the extra stuff that Fox has done. You know what I mean? Like, hey, all of a sudden we're going to be on 4 hours this week or 5 hours extra. Like there's a lot of different moving pieces like that have been happening. And I don't think that would be happening if Fox wasn't happy. So from everything I've heard, they're incredibly happy and they love bass fishing the way, it's being produced. They don't want to change it. And, they don't want to put a laser behind the lure or anything like they did to hockey back in the day.
Oh, that was awesome. I remember that the NHL on Fox, and depending on how fast the puck was going, it would change colors from like blue to orange with the streak behind it.
Yeah.
And when the guy was like in the corner mucking it up, it would just be like this blue glow around everybody to show that the puck was still in there. I would always, you always waited for like Pronger, or it was like right towards the end, I believe, of like Ally Frady's career. One of those guys to just tee it up from the point to see what color the puck streak would be.
It didn't last long though, did it?
No.
I guess people couldn't see the puck, so it was the idea to. But here's the one thing that I've learned about hockey fans: none of them had a hard time seeing the puck.
No.
You know what I mean? It's kind of like trying to get people to understand football. People that are into football love football. The
one tracker that I do like is what they've done with the golf, with the shot tracker, where you see the shot shape. Like, I think that was really cool.
Yeah. I'd like to see a lot of that in, when you're talking the future of live. That'd be something cool, if you ask me, to be able to see, because the one thing that I don't think anyone sees, including the anglers, when you're in the water, Panger, you've seen it, how often they're all fishing the same spots. Like literally there's a point and they roll up, and if there's somebody fishing it, they think, oh, somebody's on it. But if they come around that point, they're like, oh, nobody's been here. But meanwhile, like me and Overstreet have sat at points in tournaments and watched half the field fish that exact point, but it'd be pretty cool to set up a situation like that to see how they all fish it different. You know what I mean? And see what they ignore.
You guys need to do that.
Yeah, I'd like
100% this year. A course tracker, and then you have the different colors on it, and it's literally. I mean, I think that's doable, man. Okay. Especially on the. You could do it on the final day. I mean, it'd be awesome with all 100, but then you see the tracks where everything is on top of each other and all of that, and then dude, if you could give them all sorts of different colors.
Imagine how happy the anglers would be to show like their exact track. Like
I think
don't expose enough.
Well, you wouldn't have to say who it was.
Okay.
You wouldn't have to say who the track was, but just at the end you could say, look at these stretches, and that would be interesting.
And then I'd be doing interviews like this, and you'd be like, well, who is the periwinkle track? We've been wondering.
Who's the magenta? Let's bring this thing full circle. We started talking out. I mentioned that the first time I met you was when you were covering the Toyota Texas Bass Classic, one of the coolest events ever. I remember they have the double decker there, like the band Perry, like Jake Owen, like all sorts of awesome acts. And it's kind of morphed. They still have it's not called the Toyota Texas Bass Classic anymore, but it is still a tournament that you guys put on, what you've had at Lake Fork with the Elite Series in combination with Texas Parks and Wildlife. That is, I don't think that would exist without the origins of the TTBC back in 2000 that started in 2007. Fair enough?
Yeah, no, that definitely, the TTBC kind of evolved into an Elite Series stop. And I mean, who wants not to go to Lake Fork after what happens there every year?
Yeah.
It's nuts. But like that if it wasn't for the TTBC, I wouldn't have a job. If it wasn't for TTBC, there wouldn't be that event. Like that event was, I think, so far before its time almost. You know what I mean? It was just a very cool event that I kind of wish it came later in some ways. Like if you look at the technology now, it would be so much better to see everything. There was only so little we could see back then.
And that event morphed into, like I said, an individual event that was kind of the best of the best, the top 15 in the Angler of the Year from each tour. It was held in the fall, and it was kind of your reward for finishing in the top 15 in the points. And it also paid you had trucks and hundreds of thousands of dollars and a crystal vase. I mean, there was some big money that was involved in that. Like, guys were really ticked when they finished 16th, 17th, 18th in the Angler of the Year on the FLW Tour, the PAA, or the Elite Series. But those early years, the first couple years, they were 4-person teams, and they worked together, and it was kind of an innovative team concept. And we've circled around, and Mark and I have, and this is nothing new to the industry as far as, what about bringing back teams? But recently, and I mentioned this earlier this month on a show, the PBR bull riding is coming out. I think it's 8 or 9 teams. They're based in each city, like 5-6 riders to a team. You have a captain, the points. Now you can root for like the Oklahoma City team, the Kansas City team, the Austin team, that bowling has that, the same team. You have a lot of professional athletes that run. So you're talking individual sports that are now becoming team events. And fishing is a prime example like that. Jeffries has done charts and shows all about how he thinks this is good. And now you're seeing these other organizations that are kind of going that way. Do you think we'll ever make a turn back to that kind of TTBC format or a team format ever in the foreseeable future in fishing? Or is this thing always going to be a individual sport?
I think it's an individual sport for the most part. You know what I mean? Like at the top level, but I do think that there's room for teams. Like I've said for years, I wish we would have a specialty event where, at the end of the year, when we do all-star events, stuff like that, I've always been like, man, we should turn this into a team event and literally take the top 50 in Angler of the Year and they draft the bottom 50. You know what I mean? And and have an actual draft where we commentate on it. And then you get down to the end, there's so much setting up because you're not picking your partner. You could be with somebody that might be a little uncomfortable, but for the most part, you put two pro anglers together, even the quiet ones. This is the truth. Like even the quiet guys that like don't talk a lot on camera, you put two of them together, they generally don't shut up that much.
Mm-hmm.
So I do think that I'd love to see, people paired together, at a specialty event. But I think in my opinion, it's more of a specialty event just because it's an individual sport.
100%.
I mean, that what was cool about TTBC, because my original job wasn't on the stage. Like I got that as it changed, in year 2 or 3. But initially my job was to talk to them during their strategy session, because we'd have 4 members on a team. You'd have the AM team and the PM team. So the AM team fishes the morning session and the afternoon team fishes the afternoon session. They would get 20 minutes to talk over a map, all the teams together. And my job was literally to run around and just get in the middle of those 4 of them and ask questions or try to steal information to relay to the viewer. But I just think, like, if you look at it today, man, if that was all live and you could hear those discussions,
that'd be
what
awesome.
You would learn, and like the specifics that they would, you know what I mean? To hear an angler really give those specifics, like, cause that, like, and to see the emotion that angler would have. Like, imagine the angler that catches them real good in the morning, and then they try to tell their team in the afternoon, and they're watching and they're like, you're doing it wrong. I think it would be a really cool specialty event.
Yeah. Okay. So here's what I have in mind, and this year's Angler of the Year is absolutely perfect because I liked that. I liked the All-Star event. I liked that in 20. What was it? 2018, 2017 when we went to Decatur, my home state of Illinois. Aaron Martins won the event, but it was a really cool deal, and there's been iterations of this. But here's what I have in mind. You have 5 team captains. They each get to pick 5 anglers in a roundabout way. Your 5 team captains are the top 5 in the Angler of the Year. Just listen to this. The draft is live, just like it is for the NHL.
Yeah.
Seth Feider, Chris Johnson, Brandon Polinick, Patrick Walters, and Corey Johnson. Now they get to choose from 6 through the rest of the field, and they each get 5 rounds. So you have 5 teams of 5 anglers that they're each crafting. You have a fishery that, is going to be the host for that all-star event. You put some money up, maybe you do it for charity, something that they can win, like an all-star game, where it's like, hey, the MVP gets the car and each guy on the winning team gets it. But you have 5 teams of 6 guys then competing. And then each team, you break it down into 3 boats, and you have 2 of the guys in each team. So like Seth would get to pick first, so he could pick whoever, and then Chris and Brandon and Patrick and Corey, and you have that draft live, and they form their teams, and then you figure out like the Ryder Cup, who you're going to pair up with who for it. And I think that'd be an awesome 3-day event. I think that would get a lot of views, generate a lot of interest. I think it would definitely bring some anglers in who thought their season was over, who got, a captain's pick, who got to make the team. You have a lot of, why'd he pick him? Who picked him? That type of stuff. So that was my idea for it when I kind of thought about this. But I agree with you. I don't think that a team event in the fishing should have any impact on guys' livelihoods.
Yeah, I just think it'd be a great learning tool for viewers. I think it'd be cool for the guys. It would be a different feel. And that was kind of what the TTBC became. In some ways, it actually hurt it. Like, it helped it, but hurt it. Like, because it was good, but it also became fun. You know what I mean? It didn't have that same... It's not the classic. It's not the pressure cooker. You know what I mean? Even though they were paying.
But it made careers, dude. Like, think about Keith Combs. Think about what Keith Combs did with the TTBC. I mean, that's when he really started to come on it. Look at Brian Snowden. I mean, that's a career achievement for Brian Snowden. Look at Matt Herron. The last year of the TTBC, what that did for Matt Herron with the money. I mean, it's the pinnacle of some guys and launched some guys' career, put a lot of money in guys' pockets over the years. Trucks, boats, hundreds of thousands of dollars. I think it was a really cool event.
I agree totally. But here, one thing I got to say to you, Panger. I think every once in a while, the fishing world needs to just look at what it has and be thankful. You know what I mean? Because if you look at bass fishing is better now than it's ever been, as far as like, you can watch it every week, a different tour or whatever you want, like on whatever type of lake you want. But it always seems like the fishing world is always like, well, we need something different. And I feel like
I'm guilty.
we're all guilty, and especially with doing a podcast, part of the job is to pose those kind of questions. But man, I remember when the TT, like the amount of people that I read comments from every week were like, all the leagues should get together and take the top 10. And I'm like, it happened. And people complained. Why is it in Texas? It should be here. Stuff's pretty good. I mean, we fill an arena full of people. Let's stop arguing whether we should charge for tickets or whatever and just be like, wow, this is freaking spectacular. Because I'm pretty sure if you did a poll amongst the Bassmasters of yesteryear, they would love to be fishing today.
That's a good point.
Speech.
That's a good point, Dave. Dude, thanks, man. That was a good time. I think we covered a bunch of stuff. What do you got in 2022 scheduled for Mercer, Facts of Fishing, that type of stuff? How far in advance do you schedule?
No. I'm horrible at it. That's what I hate about it. Like I'm always like literally, you can ask every guest. Most guests I book the night before. Like literally going into the season right now, I've done a few of them to try and get ahead, but that'll fall behind. But yeah, normally the week before, and I'm an idiot that way because I honestly feel bad, Penger, because I'm like, well, I know he was on Bass Talk Live, and I don't want to book, and I'm the same way. I'm an idiot that way, so. I don't think that far ahead, but I have fun doing it, and I had fun talking to you, Penger. And I
enjoyed it too. No, that's awesome. We'll get over it.
Okay.
It's no big thing. See, I'm still working on trying to bring the music in, have the close dialed up with the right music, and then not like talk very slowly while I do each step.
I think it's smooth. I mean, I think it's incredibly smooth.
Thank you.
Yeah, really, really good stuff.
Enjoy it. What are you on? You're on Lake Scugog?
Yeah. There's a dude ice fishing right in front of my house right now.
You should just walk out there and be like, what are you doing on my ice? You would just lose it. Does he know that it's your house?
Wow.
I mean, you're up in Canada. He's got to know who you are. You're like a Canadian treasure.
Nah. Don't believe the press clippings. It's not true.
That needs to be your next Instagram post. You need to go Instagram Live, shuffle out on Lake Scugog, and yell at him, what are you doing fishing by ice?
Yeah, I'm going to get to it. I'll do that. Check out my Instagram.
All right. Thanks, Dave. That's all we got for BTL. We'll see you guys later.